Busy Monday for you then, eh?
Busy Monday, aren't they all? But I appreciate you making the time, Ken. I do.
Oh, no problem. This one actually worked out like not crazy busy for me because most of my clients and company are US based. So
excellent. Memorial Day.
Exactly. Nobody's in the office. It's quiet. So busy for you, but it worked out okay for me. So that's all right. All righty. Cool. Well, without further ado. Welcome back to Scouting Stuff. You've got two of us this week. I continue to be Scouter Ken, and on the other end of the internet, we have Caleb Moniz, who is with Scouts Canada. In what role do you hold?
So you begin with the tough questions. I am special advisor to the national leadership team, but also in a temporary capacity, I am Deputy National Commissioner for Communications.
Well, that's quite a stew of titles there. So
that's right.
And they sound like two very different things. So what does the first one do? The special advisor, what's that?
So the first one is a role that is really, it helps out the National Key 3 as they examine the organization, and obviously they lead the organization, and I provide whatever insight I can over the years that I've been volunteering to help them out. And so that's the first role. You might say, well, that doesn't sound very structured, and the response would be no, it is not, which is partially why I've also tacked on interim Deputy National Commissioner for Communications, which is of course something that I was fortunate to do as a youth commissioner not that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. And in that role as Deputy National Commissioner for Communications, that's a mouthful.
Yep.
You have undertaken, well, actually, just before we get into that, because I guess the other question is, you briefly alluded to it there, talking about your other role there. How long have you been with scouting? Like, what's your scouting story?
I began scouting as a 6-year-old beaver. When my mom wanted to get both my dad and myself out of the house in one fell swoop. And so it was very successful. It was a very successful initiative. I have had so many great experiences with Scouts. I attribute much of my growing up, obviously, to the experience that I've had with my friends, and of course, under the guidance of such amazing Scouters. I began volunteering more seriously at the age of 12. I became a youth spokesperson, which was a really neat program that helped to showcase scouting to the world, much like you're doing right now, my friend, but also obviously with marketing campaigns and within the organization, and sometimes would show up on the news, that sort of thing. We're actually starting that up again, so folks
nice.
Who are listening do exactly. So do give that a look. It's a great opportunity. And then when I was 14, just a couple of years later, because obviously scouting has such a great emphasis on youth leadership, I became the Council Youth Commissioner in Toronto. So that was a great experience. And then COVID happened, and that definitely changed the experience. But following that, I took on a youth commissioner role with the communications team, which I had for a couple of years, and then here we are.
And here we are. So have you kind of then done the whole track, like Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, and then into Vents and Rovers? Yeah.
The whole track, and everything was different, but in its own way, everything was awesome, because I feel that I was really able to enjoy some great programming in Beavers and Cubs and Scouts. And COVID happened during Ventures, which was a little bit unfortunate, but by that time I was volunteering, more seriously, so I was able to help deliver what programming we could from that virtual standpoint. Now I've sort of transitioned more or less to, obviously, as a scouter to the volunteering side. I'm going camping this weekend, of course, with the Cubs. Awesome. So it's that sort of I've had a very pleasant experience, and I hope that in these roles that I've taken, I'm able to help Scouts across the country have similar pleasant experiences with our movement.
Nice. Yeah. That's such a terrible time for COVID to interrupt things, because Ventures, I always found like Ventures is when the program sort of opens up in front of you, like it's much more, and I mean, it has to be structured and guided a lot more with the Beavers and the Cubs, because they're small. They can do a lot, but they do need more guidance. And then with Scouts, the freedom definitely comes in, and sometimes very quickly. But yeah, Vents was when, at least in my trajectory through the program, Vents was when the world just opened up in front of you, and on into Rovers. So that's awesome. Another lifer. Okay. So just before I cut myself off there, yes, I was going to say, in your role as the Deputy Director Communications, temporary, titles,
right.
you have launched I guess we would call it a podcast officially under the Scouts Canada label called, if I have this correctly, Profiles in Canada.
That's right, Ken. Thanks for mentioning it. It started with some posters that I remember seeing in Baseline, of course, the national office, in the National Scout Museum. And it was from a marketing campaign that Scouting did a while ago, where they featured notable Canadians who have been Scouts. And that got me thinking, which notable Canadians might have been Scouts? Because frankly, obviously Scouting is a formative experience for so many different people. It teaches important values that we need in our lives going forward: citizenship, discipline, finding what we're passionate about, finding what we're good at. So I did some elementary research along those lines, and sure enough, there was a great big list of names that was procured from that. And that was the first thing. And then the second thing is also, well, we're an organization that sort of has two benefits, because when you're volunteering with Scouting, when you're a Scout, you're not just obviously helping the young people who are in the program, but you're also helping communities in general, from tree planting to helping out at food banks or soup kitchens. This is something that we have a double effect, which is quite fortunate for us as an organization. So I wonder what Friends of Scouting might exist, what people might not have necessarily been affiliated with our organization, but know people that are, or maybe are just friendly to the organization. And so that's sort of where that stemmed from. And then what better way to connect folks from across the country than to have some sort of podcast series where we're featuring people who've done great things, who might want to provide advice to young people today, and have positive feelings for the Scouting movement. So that is sort of where it began. And obviously I couldn't have imagined that Chris Hadfield would say yes.
Well,
but he did, which means a lot, of course, because he, of course, was a Cub Scout in Central Escarpment Council with the Milton Cub Group, and it sort of developed from there. So we are releasing episodes weekly. This next, I shouldn't say because I don't know when this is being released, but.
Well, if I'm lucky, I'll have the episode out this week. But
okay, well, that's fantastic, because this week the episode is going to feature Daryl Dexter, who was the Premier of Nova Scotia, and we've previously spoken with Beverly McLaughlin, who was the Chief Justice of Canada. We spoke with Alan Rock, who is the Minister of Justice, actually, and the UN ambassador to the United Nations. And we're going to see all sorts of people come through this series, which is awesome. Some Nobel laureates. We have some more government officials. We have some more ambassadors. We have interesting people from all walks of life, actually. And many Scouters, actually. Some Scouts, some former Scouts, some Scouters. It'll be good.
Awesome. Well, and it's just so fitting that you led with Chris Hadfield. I mean, obviously his availability would have dictated much of that, and his enthusiasm to come up, but he likes to, he seems like the sort who really likes to just represent, the things that he values, right? I mean, he's been a huge spokesperson for NASA, and for space exploration, and obviously for maintaining that, in Canada. So it's not surprising that, if he has good things to say about Scouting, that he would love to come out in front of a microphone and tell you all about it. But I just love that you led with the astronaut, because of course the US has been doing this for a long time too, right? And you can find it's trivially easy to find, which famous American was an Eagle Scout.
Right.
And of course, who's usually at the top of that list? Neil Armstrong, right? So you lead with the astronaut. Perfect. Just lead awesome.
With the astronaut. and in many ways, Chris Hadfield is possibly the best representation of what our movement is trying to do. which is produce young people who are obviously like the best at what they do, and they enjoy what they're doing. They're fulfilled by what they're doing, but they're also well-rounded, right? Because he likes to give back to his community, and he played the guitar in space. Like, these are people who are multi-talented. These are people who have many different skills, and they combine them into the best product of who they are that they serve their communities with. So that's why, obviously Chris Hadfield was so perfect for the first one, and I hope, of course, folks who have been able to listen, they've enjoyed it. We've released this obviously on our website. We have a brand new website for this, which is scouts.ca/profiles in Canada, of course, and it's on our YouTube and on our Spotify and also on Apple Podcasts. So I
will dig up links to all of those and make sure that they are included in the show notes.
Appreciate you.
It's an interesting. It's funny you frame it that way when you talk about, like, the way that Chris Hadfield really exemplifies the scouting values, because it's often struck me that, like, it's easy sometimes to get bogged down in the idea of, well, we're trying to form leaders for tomorrow. And, you can kind of go back through the last couple decades of Scouts Canada's messaging, and that theme is definitely there. But I don't know, at some point over the last year or so, it started to bug me a little bit. Whenever I thought about that, whenever I heard somebody talking about that, I'm just like, okay, well, because, and I mean, it is good to form leaders. And there are definitely some people who will come out of the scouting program just really exemplary as leaders, right? And those are the people like yourself who, are taking on those youth commissioner roles, council commissioner roles, people who are doing like the contingent lead stuff for international events and whatever else, right? Like there is that track. But at the same time, it's always struck me that not everybody comes out, and I would actually lump myself into this category. I mean, I did lead a small contingent to Kandersteg in 2023, but I didn't know if I'd necessarily I don't know if I'd ever describe myself as a leader per se. But one thing that the word that came to my mind was builder, right? Is that so many more people, I think, coming out of Scouts, there are going to be some leaders, but a really good leader, not everybody is that, but everybody can be. And again, my word for it was builder, right? Somebody who is that, well-rounded person who has a variety of interests, who can function in a variety of different environments, and who's really just out there trying to take whichever environment they happen to be in the moment and make it better.
That's an excellent point. And I like that word builder. I feel that when it comes to the word leader, oftentimes we just automatically assume, oh, you must mean Barack Obama, right? and that's
Prime Minister, whoever.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a Canadian equivalent of Barack Obama, but the point is, this is what we think. We think Winston Churchill, and to an extent, obviously, we recognize that as the traditional meaning. But what we're challenged to do in scouting is to really broaden that definition, because you don't need to be Barack Obama to be a leader. You don't need to be. You can be a leader just by being a good citizen. You can be a leader just by helping out, by planting the tree, because you show a good example of what a good citizenship does. And actually, the thing is, that will hopefully inspire other Scouts after you to do the same thing. And I like the idea of saying a builder, because of course you build a positive culture around you, or perhaps you build the skills that you need to make a real difference in helping other people in your communities, maybe even in your country if you're so lucky. And that is an interesting semantic distinction. But I will say we need to take a step back when we discuss the word leader, even though it's had those connotations of, as I mentioned, the Churchills and the Obamas, to say that anyone can be a leader, no matter what your personality type is. It's just in the actions that we choose to do and the motivations that we have behind them.
That is true too. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just, a semantic thing. It is something that I find in my career a lot, because the joke I often make is, whichever team I end up on in any given week, and I kind of move around a little bit. I got a few different silos that I jump between, but I wind up being dad. I wind up being dad. I'm not necessarily the most, I work in cybersecurity, right? So I'm not necessarily the most technical person. I'm not necessarily the most management savvy person. I'm not necessarily the most sales savvy person. And And there are definitely people in all of the groups that I'm in who are, objectively, if we were to track this out skills wise, like on a D&D sheet or something, they would score higher than me, right? Like they're better than me in these things, but I'm just kind of the one who's a sounding board, and I'm kind of the one who'll just lean back a little bit and probe around, if someone's like just having, even if it's like an interpersonal issue, right? And I'll be the one who's asking like the probing questions, like, okay, but why is that, right? And so, yeah, I don't know, like, and I mean, I guess in a way that is a form of leadership too. And yeah, and I do get hung up on that word just because, like, you say leadership, and I watch this in my kids too, because like I've seen my daughter stand up in front of 1,000 strange people from around the world at a campfire in Switzerland and lead them in the Rattlenbach, right?
Amazing.
And was that an act of leadership? Absolutely. If I told her that she had to get out and like lead a campfire song, she'd probably freeze up, right? A lot of it is just that semantic distinction. You got to get yourself over that hump. But yeah, it's really that like you said, with Chris Hadfield, it's, about being that sort of very broad personality. You have a lot of different things that you can do, and you can kind of just bring them in whenever you need to, right? If you're a musical person, it's awesome that you're a musical person. Is that directly relevant to you getting on a rocket and flying to the space station? Absolutely not. But once you have done that, is that something that you can do on the space station and be the first guitarist in space or whatever? Heck yes, it is. And do that in a way that, because, that was the other thing that was so notable about Chris, was everything that he was doing up there. He made it seem fun, and he made it very public. His videos back to Earth were, he was a prolific content creator, I guess we would say now. But everything was so fun.
So something that, to your point, oftentimes it's the opportunity that can form the leader. It's the opportunity can make that happen. And Scouting has been so good at providing those opportunities because it's the forum that would provide, your daughter the opportunity to lead that campfire song.
Yeah.
Or maybe even to organize a camping trip, or maybe even to organize a community service event. We see folks who are leaders in this world, folks who I've obviously then been fortunate to interview for this podcast, who weren't necessarily always expecting to step into that role. The best example that of an interview that is out just yet, of course, is with the former Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin, who grew up in Pincher Creek, Alberta, small town in Alberta, doesn't even have a scout group. I checked.
I know it well.
And she did not have any societal expectations. She did not. Her parents did not think that she would go be a lawyer. Nevertheless, a judge. Nevertheless, the chief judge, right? And yet, still, she decided, I want to pursue my passion. I want to find what I'm good at. And because she was so good at what she was good at, she eventually ascended, obviously, to this top job. And she's just one example. There are so many other examples of, folks who never anticipated that they'd end up where they'd be. And sure enough, they worked hard. They made the most of what opportunities they were afforded. And they got to where they set out to be, and now they're in a position where they want to inspire other generations to do the same thing. Chris is another perfect example, of course. He was in Air Cadets. He was in Scouts. He was a Cub Scout. And he said, after seeing Neil Armstrong land on the moon, I want to do just that. And so he set himself out a very disciplined, plan about how he wanted to be an astronaut. And sure enough, it worked out for him. And obviously, he is Canada's probably quintessential astronaut at this point. So finding these ways about how we determine our passions and how we follow them, we might just end up being leaders at the end of the day, anyways.
Absolutely. And, thinking about that, the one that we haven't discussed, sort of their trajectory a little bit, but Alan Rock's kind of interesting in a different respect because, he had served in Parliament for a while. Of course, he's most notable as having been like the Justice Minister and I think previously the Health Minister under Jean Chrétien. And Jean Chrétien, while I wouldn't, compare him directly to Obama, the man was a personality. He had a force of personality. And so it would be very easy for for any of his cabinet ministers to kind of end up being a little bit overshadowed because Chrétien was just so, like, he was a force. And, you know, thinking about like Alan Rock's history in Parliament and then beyond, he's never been the one who's like front of the pack. He's never been, you know, the prime minister. He's never been the one who's like right out there in front, but he's always been just, you know, just behind the scenes and making so much happen behind the scenes.
Right. And that's another form of leadership, without doubt. Without doubt. Yeah, Alan Rock, obviously, he talked about his significant experience. He was a lawyer. He was a law professor. He had always sort of been doing a little bit of political work. Obviously, he was familiar with Jean Chrétien's not direct predecessor, but we could say basically predecessor, Pierre Trudeau. And this is somebody who used his experiences as a lawyer, obviously, to take on the Justice Minister job, which is the top lawyer in the country. And then after that, to represent Canada at the United Nations and to make some real change with human rights leadership, because Canada traditionally, throughout our history, we have been one of the countries, at least in the Western world, that have been at the forefront of promoting human rights development. And obviously, I can't say that in broad sweeping terms because you'll find many exceptions. But that is something that, especially after the Second World War, we've taken on. He's currently even still doing that, actually, even though he was the president of the University of Ottawa. Now he's, to a degree, retired. But he is a member of the World Refugee Council. So this is something that's obviously focused on helping some of the world's most vulnerable people, refugees, right? So there are so many different pathways that we can go down. Following what we are passionate about, following maybe even what we've developed in Scouts, that love of community service, that love of helping other people. And it's often hard to find where you'll end up. Just, of course, that if you work hard and you follow what you want to do, I think the lesson to learn from these three guests and the lesson to learn from the guests that are still to come on this podcast is you'll end up in a good place. And what a great message for Scouts today.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is kind of what we hope to achieve with the program, right? Is we do want people who, can just go out into the world and succeed in whatever particular thing takes their interest. Exactly. And this might just be, me being an actual father and being a little bit biased in that regard. But I have to say, of all the 16-year-old boys that my 16-year-old daughter could have started dating, the one that she is with is, I mean, she's known him since they were both in Cubs. They were in Cubs together, Scouts, Vents, and like just he is, and a lot of the, and again, maybe I'm just a little bit biased and a little bit sensitive to this because I have daughters and they're dating or about to start dating, I'm sure. But just, if I think about the average 15 or 16-year-old boy that I see out in the community around here, and then I think about the crop of them that I have in Vents, they're already they are already different in a lot of it's hard to describe, but they're more, in some ways they just seem a little bit more confident. They seem a little bit more respectful, and they seem just, I don't know, a little bit more comfy in their own skin, for lack of a better way of putting it.
That's the perfect way of putting it. That's a perfect way of putting it. Scouting builds confidence. Confidence is something that is more important, I'd say, for young people now than ever. We are in the internet age. We are in the age where you don't know what young people are going to come into online. We're at a time where COVID essentially robbed 2 years from important development, important soft skill development, which is more than just obviously like reading and writing and arithmetic. It's also how do you work with people and how do you see yourself in this broader world. And that's something that Scouting has always done so well. It's provided that experience where you can just learn how to be with other people and how you can learn how to work as a team, to find shared goals, to just enjoy yourself really in a way that's going to be safe safe in a way that is going to set you up. And so congratulations to your daughter. Then good.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad that she has enjoyed herself so much in this program that of course we all find so meaningful. And I agree completely. I just came back from the National Service Team meeting that was in Ottawa. And for this meeting, the Council Youth Commissioners attend. And of course, Council Youth Commissioners are the youth representative and the management of the individual councils that we have across this country. Everything from Newfoundland Council, all the way to Pacific Coast Council, for example. And what I find is two things. The first is that this is probably the crop of Council Youth Commissioners, at least in my recollection. I've been volunteering since about 2018 at the national level. That is the youngest. We have about the youngest group. And yet despite that, they are among the most mature. They are definitely in a space where they can produce meaningfully to the work of their council, to the scouting in their council, and even to discussions with adults as if they themselves are adults in that room. That is something I'd say that is a benefit of scouting, is that we provide those opportunities for young people to develop that confidence that other young people might not have.
Yeah, it is really astounding. And like I say, I don't, if you ask me to elaborate on it anymore, I don't know if I could. I don't think I give you a bullet point list, but yeah, it's just, I see people out and about in the community. I see people of that age out and about in the community, and then I see the people that I know through scouting, whether it's my own troop or there's a few troops in the area here, and some of my kids' friends are members of that, and it's just a little bit different, but it's a notable thing, and I do like that. I like that scouting sort of continues to bring that for people, because that was my own experience in the program, going through it, and it was a direction, it was an identity when, and that's another thing you struggle with, right? When you're in that sort of teenage years and kind of in your early 20s, who am I? What am I? Right? And being able to, we give people something, right? This becomes a locus of I am a scout. Oh, okay. Now I know something. It's a thing, and it's a great thing. So yeah, that is awesome. So, okay. Profiles in Canada. You have, 3 episodes out, if I count correctly, as we record this, and a 4th one coming out this week.
That's right. 3 episodes out so far, 4th one this week. We've been fortunate to have quite a few that we will be releasing over the summer and into the fall. Cool. The way that we've scheduled out this season is that the last episode is going to be in December. And that, yes, and I don't think, I think I'm fine to just say who it will be. It will be with James Urbinski, who is a Canadian medical doctor who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1999. And that is because he was the president of Médecins Sans Frontières. It is to be decided if he was in Scouts yet, because I haven't asked him. But I would not be surprised if the answer is yes, of course.
Yeah, could well be.
It could well be. And it's another example of where leadership can come in places where we won't necessarily expect it. Because, of course, he was a medical doctor. I'll bet that, and of course the interview has not yet happened, so this might be apocryphal, but I'll bet he went into that profession saying, I'm going to help people as a medical doctor. And then sure enough, he's found a way to do that, but leading an organization, on an NGO that advocates for human rights for people worldwide, and Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. That's another great example, and it's something to talk about with the well-roundedness of the scouting education. As I've mentioned before, is that in Scouts we don't believe in specialization. We don't believe that you can only be good at one thing. We want our young people to develop a skill set that is wholesome, that says that yes, they can go canoeing at the same time as they might, as Chris Hadfield did, explore their passions in music, and that despite all that, they can still give back to their community and make a positive difference. And that's something that our movement's always been about.
Yeah. What's the joke that we always used to make with the Cub camps? They'll come home knowing how to wash dishes.
That's right. Yes, they will. Well, we'll see after this camp I'm going to this weekend, Ken.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a challenge, but
that's right.
Just get your 3 buckets. You're good.
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. You've got a busy day ahead of you, I'm sure, so I will let you get back to it. And I will probably be reaching out to you just to confirm all the links that are going to go in the show notes, because like you said, there's YouTube, there's Spotify, there's Apple Podcasts, and of course the Scouts Canada website. You can find profiles in Canada on all of those. I know I've checked out a couple of the videos already. They're very well produced. Props to the Marcom team.
Props to the Marcom team.
And rightio. Before we sign off, though, it is sort of a tradition on my end to offer the floor to a guest. If you have any shout-outs, anybody that you in particular want to be like, hey, thanks.
I want to use this opportunity, obviously, to thank the amazing Marcom team, because profiles in Canada cannot happen without the good work of folks like Nana, who works in social media, Sveta, who does all of the editing. Of course, that is a skill that I have not developed, so it's good to have her. And then, of course, thank you to all the folks who've come on the Profiles in Canada series. This is a series that is going to become bi-weekly after this next episode, but the next episode after the Premier of Nova Scotia Forum, Premier Nova Scotia, is going to be with Neil Hetherington, who is the president of the Daily Bread Food Bank. And through the summer, we're going to speak with folks who won, an example is a scouter, Art McDonald, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2018. We're going to talk to other former cabinet ministers. We're going to meet other interesting people. And above all, we are going to demonstrate the power of, I want to say, leading, but also building, as you said, Ken, building in Canada. So much thanks to that. And I will leave just one last thing. Thank you to the viewers, but above, and the listeners, but above all that, for Profiles in Canada, thank you to folks who share it around, because ideally, we are an organization that thrives on role models. We are an organization where we enable older youth, where we enable scouters to make real meaningful impacts in the lives of our young people. It is a common saying that you remember that scouter who made a difference. For me, there were two scouters who made a real difference. It was my Kayla, when I was in Cubs, and it was a scouter when I was in Scouts. And one of the two had kids in the program. The other one never had any kids in the program. And yet they still gave their time equally to help young people in their community. So you never know. You never know who can be that role model. And I hope that Chris Hadfield might inspire some scouts today to become the astronauts of tomorrow. So thank you to all those people. And thank you, of course, to Ken for having me on. It's a real pleasure to speak with you.
Brilliant and well said. I love it. Okay, well, thank you for coming on, talking about Profiles in Canada. Thank you out there for listening. And until next time, be prepared.
Be prepared. Thanks very much, Ken.